In 1961, there was a small town called Willow Creek. The kind of town where doors stayed unlocked, where neighbors waved from their porches, and where life moved at a pace that allowed people to notice one another. Every morning, the train passed through Willow Creek. It didn't stop for long, but it reminded everyone that the world was bigger than the town they lived in. And for one young man, that train carried dreams. Robert Hale was 19 years old, quiet, responsible, the kind of young man who listened more than he spoke. He worked part-time at the train station, helping travelers with their bags, checking schedules, keeping the platform clean. It wasn't glamorous work, but Robert did it with care. He believed that how you did small things said a lot about who you were. Robert didn't dream of becoming rich. He dreamed of becoming worthy. Worthy of a good life. Worthy of a future. Worthy of love. One late afternoon, as the sun leaned low in the sky, Robert noticed someone new on the platform. A young woman stood beside her mother, holding a small suitcase with both hands. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't restless. She was simply standing there, looking around, taking it all in. Her name was Evelyn Brooks. She was 18 years old. Evelyn had kind eyes, the kind that made people feel seen. She smiled gently, not because she had to, but because it felt natural. When Robert approached to help with her luggage, she thanked him softly. Their hands brushed for just a moment. Nothing dramatic happened. No sparks flew. No music swelled. And yet, something settled quietly between them. They spoke about simple things. The weather, the train schedule, where Evelyn's family had moved from. There were pauses in their conversation, but they weren't uncomfortable. They felt easy. And when the train arrived and Evelyn walked away, Robert realized something strange. He hoped he would see her again. In the weeks that followed, they did see each other again. Often. Sometimes it was just a wave from across the platform. Sometimes a short walk through town. Sometimes sitting side by side on a bench, watching trains arrive and depart. They didn't rush anything. People back then rarely did. They talked about books, about family, about what they wanted their lives to mean. Robert told Evelyn he dreamed of leaving Willow Creek one day, not to escape it, but to build something he could be proud of. Evelyn listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to change his mind. That was how much she loved him. Soon, the train station became more than a workplace. It became their place. They laughed there. They shared silence there. They imagined futures there. Sometimes they said nothing at all, and it was enough. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in soft oranges and golds, Robert told Evelyn the news. He had been offered a job in another city, a real opportunity, one that could change his life. He was excited and terrified. Evelyn felt the fear too, but she smiled, because loving someone she believed meant wanting them to grow, even if it scared you. At the train station, on the night before he left, Robert looked at her and said the words that would echo for decades. "I'll come back. I promise." Evelyn nodded. "I'll be right here." They shared a kiss. Soft. Respectful. The kind of kiss people used to remember forever. The train pulled away. Evelyn stood on the platform until it disappeared from sight. Robert watched the town shrink into the distance. Neither of them knew that this moment, this ordinary goodbye, would shape the rest of their lives. At first, the letters came often. Long letters. Careful letters. Letters filled with hope. Then life became busy. Work grew demanding. Time slipped. The letters became shorter, then slower, and eventually, they stopped. Not because love ended, but because life got louder. Robert arrived in the city with one suitcase and a heart full of determination. The work was demanding. The hours were long. Every day, he told himself he was building something worthwhile. At night, he sat on the edge of his bed, holding Evelyn's last letter in his hands. He read it more than once, sometimes more than he wanted to admit. He began writing replies, careful, thoughtful words. But each time he hesitated. "I'll write tomorrow," he told himself. When things are less hectic, when I have more to say. Tomorrow came and went. Back in Willow Creek, Evelyn kept a routine. She helped her mother. She worked. She smiled when people asked how she was doing. And she waited. Every afternoon, she passed by the train station. Not stopping, not staring, just close enough to feel connected. When no letters arrived, she told herself Robert was busy. That important things take time. But time has a way of testing even the strongest hope. Weeks turned into months. Evelyn reread Robert's earlier letters, searching for clues she might have missed. Did she say something wrong? Did she ask for too much? Or not enough? No answer came. And in silence, the mind fills in its own explanations. People began to notice. Friends asked questions. Family offered opinions. Waiting too long isn't wise, they said gently. Life doesn't pause for anyone. Evelyn listened. She nodded. She didn't argue, because deep down, she was beginning to wonder if waiting was all she was doing. In the city, Robert worked harder than ever. He told himself success would make everything right. That once he had stability, once he had something solid to offer, he would go back. But time passed faster than he expected, and pride crept in quietly. What if she's moved on? What if I waited too long? So he waited more. Neither Robert nor Evelyn stopped loving. They stopped believing. Believing the other was still there. Believing love could survive distance. Believing they still mattered to one another. And so, without anger, without betrayal, their story slipped into silence. One autumn evening, Evelyn stood at the train station longer than usual. She watched the train come and go. For the first time, she felt something settle inside her. Not peace, but acceptance. When she left the platform that night, she did not look back. Soon after, she said yes to a man who was kind, steady, and present. She told herself love could grow. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it didn't. Years later, Robert heard through a mutual acquaintance that Evelyn had married. He felt the news like a quiet ache, not sharp enough to stop him, but deep enough to stay. He folded the letter he never sent and placed it in a drawer. He married too, a good woman, a practical match. They built a life that looked right from the outside. But some nights, Robert dreamed of a small-town train station and a girl who once promised she'd be right there. Years turned into decades. Children were born. Responsibilities grew. Life moved forward as it always does. But memory stayed behind. Robert became a husband, and later a father. He worked hard, provided well, did what was expected of him. He loved his family, in a steady, dependable way. But some loves are built on passion. Others are built on partnership. Robert's marriage was built on commitment. At night, after the house grew quiet, he sometimes sat alone in the living room, the television playing softly, his thoughts far away. There were moments he couldn't explain. Moments when a sound or a smell or a passing train pulled him backward in time. Evelyn became a wife, too. She cared deeply. She gave generously. She made a home where warmth lived. Her husband was kind, reliable, a good man. She was grateful. But gratitude is not the same as longing. There were days Evelyn felt full and content, and days when something unnamed pressed quietly on her heart. She never spoke of it. Some things, she believed, were meant to be carried silently. Children grew, left home, started lives of their own. Responsibilities shifted. Dreams changed shape. Robert and Evelyn aged not suddenly, but gradually, in mirrors, in slower steps, in longer pauses before standing. Robert's wife grew ill. He cared for her faithfully, held her hand, sat beside her bed through long nights. When she passed, the house became unbearably quiet. Grief is not loud. It is heavy. Robert learned how to cook for one, how to fold laundry that no longer needed folding, how to sleep in a bed that felt too large. In the stillness, memories returned uninvited. Evelyn lost her husband years later. She mourned deeply. Not only the man she loved, but the life they had built together. She packed away his clothes slowly, carefully. She kept his favorite chair where it was. At night, she sometimes spoke out loud, not expecting an answer, just not wanting silence to win. Widowhood is a quiet season. Friends check in less often as time passes. The world expects you to move on, even when you're not sure where on is. Robert and Evelyn learned how to live alone. They learned that loneliness is not the same as being alone. Loneliness is remembering who you once were with someone else. For both of them, the memories returned gently, not as regret, not as pain, but as reminders. A song on the radio, a letter found in an old box, a photograph yellowed with age, and always the train station. One afternoon, Robert found the letter he never sent. He read it slowly, smiled at the young man he once was, and for the first time in decades, he wondered, not with sadness, but curiosity, what became of her. Evelyn passed by the train station one day, on her way to the grocery store. She hadn't planned to stop, but she did. She stood there longer than she realized, watching the tracks stretch into the distance. For the first time in years, she did not turn away quickly. Both Robert and Evelyn reached the same quiet understanding. They had lived good lives. They had loved faithfully. They had done their best, but something unfinished remained. Not to undo the past, not to regret it, but to honor what had once been true. It was a crisp morning in autumn. Robert had driven miles to the old train station in Willow Creek. Not for business, not for errands, not for nostalgia alone. He returned to remember, to touch a piece of his youth, to see the tracks that once held the weight of a promise. The station was smaller than he remembered, quieter, but unchanged. And as he stood there, hands resting lightly on the railing, he felt a familiar presence. Evelyn had her own reasons. She walked slowly down the familiar path toward the platform. The wind caught her hair. She paused. The station seemed suspended in time. The same benches, the same worn bricks, the same tracks stretching into forever. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, not with expectation, but with memory. And then they saw each other. It was not dramatic. No running into each other. No shouted names. Just two people, decades older, standing a few feet apart, eyes meeting. Recognition, quiet, immediate, undeniable. Robert's hand brushed against the railing. Evelyn's fingers touched her bag. Neither spoke at first. Words felt too small for what they felt. Finally, Robert's voice broke the silence. Soft, cautious. Evelyn. She nodded. A small, gentle smile. Timid but warm. It's been a long time, she said. Too long, he replied. They laughed quietly. Not a full laugh, but enough to break the weight of decades. They began to talk slowly, carefully, about the letters that were never sent, about the trains they watched, about the lives they built, about the quiet ache of missing someone. Every word was deliberate, every pause intentional. They spoke slowly, because neither wanted to rush a lifetime into a single moment. Both were older now, wiser, yes, but cautious. What if we've waited too long? Robert asked softly. Evelyn shook her head. Love doesn't have an expiration date, she said. Not this kind. And in that moment, decades of silence began to unravel. They did not kiss right away. Instead, they reached for each other's hands. Fingers intertwined slowly, and then a gentle, careful kiss. Not hurried, not needy. A kiss that carried 60 years of hope, regret, and memory. It was a kiss that said everything they had not said before. Standing on the platform, Robert realized something. Love had never left. It had waited quietly, patiently, until they were ready. Evelyn realized the same. Time had taught them both what mattered most. And sometimes, second chances are better than first ones. They walked slowly from the platform, hands intertwined, breathing in the crisp autumn air. It was not a hurried reunion. It was gentle, deliberate, and deliberate is a word for love that has survived time. Robert looked at Evelyn. Older, wiser, stronger. Her eyes still held the light that had captivated him as a young man. "Shall we start over?" he asked softly. Evelyn smiled, a tear sliding down her cheek. "Yes. But let's not waste a single day," she whispered. They sat on a familiar bench, the one they had shared so many years ago. For hours they spoke, about the past they had missed together, about the life they had lived apart, about regret, about sorrow, about joy, about the people they had been and the people they had become. Each word was a bridge, each pause a shared breath. "I never stopped loving you," Robert said. "Neither did I," Evelyn replied. It was as simple and as profound as that. They laughed together. They cried together. They shared memories old and new. For the first time in decades, they felt fully alive. Their hands held tightly. Their hearts beat in quiet unison. And the train station, that old, quiet witness of their youth, felt sacred once more. They spoke of mistakes, of letters not sent, words not said, fears not voiced. And slowly, gently, they forgave the past, forgave themselves, forgave the world that had kept them apart. Because love is not about perfection. It is about choosing each other, again and again, no matter the years lost. They took walks through Willow Creek. They returned to old cafes, watched trains come and go. They held hands. They smiled often. And they realized something essential. The love that waited decades was richer, deeper, and stronger than any first love could ever have been. Because time had taught them patience, courage, and perspective. Some love waits. Some waits through silence, through distance, through life lived fully apart. But when it finds its way back, it is not diminished. It is whole. Kindly subscribe to this channel and tell us the part of the world you are watching us from.